Hello, true duelists. It's YGO Strat's Yu-Gi-Oh! Single Card History, where I'm going to be talking about some of the cards that have impacted Yu-Gi-Oh! Throughout the years, and some of the other ones that just didn't. Today's card, the quick play spell that apparently is either broken or useless, Emergency Teleport. Emergency Teleport was first released in the Duelist Genesis in 2008 in both Ultra Rare and in Ultimate Rare, with notable reprints to date, including a Secret Rare print in the Legendary Collection 5Ds in 2014, an Ultra Rare print in High Speed Riders in 2015, Gold Rare and Premium Gold Infinite Gold in 2016, and in both Rare as well as the Collector's Rare in 2022's The Grand Creators. For time on the ban list, it quickly became a problem card in its debut format, going to limited status on the March 2009 ban list to hit the then Tier 0 threat of Teledad. It would stay limited for 3 years before going to semi-limited on the March 2012 ban list, and back to unlimited on the September 2012 ban list, where it again stayed for a few years before going back down to semi-limited on the April 2016 ban list as a slap on the wrist to Kozmo, before being limited again on the August 2016 ban list, just one format later. Once again, it stayed there for a few years before being semi-limited on the October 2021 ban list for a total of 1 format, and is once again unlimited at 3 as I make this video. And if the pattern is set and repeats itself, then around about sometime in 2027, give or take a year, this card will be limited again. Holy fuck, that took too long. On to the card. This one is a quick play spell, and its effect reads: special summon 1 level 3 or lower psychic monster from your hand or deck, but banish it during the end phase of this turn. Emergency Teleport is one of the cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! That seems, as I said in the beginning, to either be broken or useless, which can be seen in its ping-ponging around the limited slot. Who could have thought that quick access to a tuner could lead to any sort of trouble? When Emergency Teleport was released in 2008, not only was it released alongside powerful and game-changing synchro monsters for the time, such as Stardust Dragon and Goyo Guardian, but they dropped into a meta being dominated by Dark Armed Dragon and Gladiator Beasts, and sometimes even Judgment Dragon, depending on who you ask. As it turns out, the synchro pool at the dawn of the synchro era, not just in terms of synchro monsters themselves, but also with regards to the tuners, was set to be easily abusable. This is of course in no small part thanks to Emergency Teleport, able to summon out the newly released Krebons from the deck without using your normal summon, meaning if you had a level 4 on board, you could get easy access to Goyo Guardian, or if you had been able to get something like Destiny Hero Malicious into your graveyard, you could make a level 8 like Stardust Dragon or Red Dragon Archfiend. In some opening hands, it was even possible to get out 2 level 8 synchros and end up with 3 darks in your graveyard through that same combo, all to drop a dad on top of everything. E-Telly and Krebons in hand and a Malicious engrave, and bada boom bada bing, you've got game on board. This was the solidification of Teledad as a deck, and the game's first Tier 0 format, which was met with the same amount of joy and positivity that all other Tier 0 formats have been met with. This resulted in E-Telly being limited just 6 months or so from its release in 2009, although that wasn't the end for Teledad. It was the end of the reign for it as the best deck of the format, but in April 2009 at Shonen Jump Championship Anaheim, the one and only Jeff Jones won first place at the event with Teledad, running 1 copy of Dark Armed Dragon and 1 copy of E-Telly. And then that was the end of it all for Teledad, because most people playing it weren't the same tier of player as Jeff Jones, and so once he put the deck down, so did the meta put that deck down. Get it? It's a double entendre. From here, Emergency Teleport doesn't see much play because it's limited, and in 2012 there aren't any psychic tuners on par with the meta of that time, or at least none that are useful enough to warrant the Garnet status. I do feel inclined to mention Jeff Jones' Earth Psychic deck that he played at YCS Toronto 2012 to 2nd place, with Emergency Teleport just having gone back to 3 at the time. This list has always fascinated me because it looks so fun and smart, and I've never seen anyone able to play it to a degree that I would think it could get 2nd place in the 2012 meta at a YCS proper. Party Boat and Insector are neutered, but still good, and yet Jeff Jones comes in unprompted with an off-the-wall list that no one else was able to replicate to much success other than himself. Definitely a deck worth remembering in the grand scheme of the game as far as you ask me. With the card back at 3 though, it was more reliable to run some psychic tuners, as always is the case apparently with this card, and the next time it popped up in the meta was in combination with the Karakuri archetype for some truly crazy synchro plays. The deck started to see success in as early as 2013, with Desmond Johnson's top 4 list from YCS Miami being one of the first to see success with it, rocking the Solemn Brigade and a mix of Karakuri monsters to make plays, and then 3 E-Tele with 3 E-targets for some reliable synchro spam. The list would stay mostly the same over the course of the next year, and with the deck getting tops before and after, but not during the spellbook ruler format, it was always a solid choice. This here is from Anders Co., which got first place at YCS Sydney in 2014, and was mostly the same being a year later. One less E-Tele target and some redoxes added in, but really, mostly the same deck. But with 2014 comes Duelist Alliance, and so comes with it the end of decks that were viable before Duelist Alliance. However, that is not the end for Emergency Teleport specifically. It saw limited play in Cleafort decks of all things as a side deck option. Players would put in 3 Emergency Teleport and a single copy of Recover, because normal summoning any Clee monster and then using Emergency Teleport could give the player access to Naturia Beast to shut off spell cards, which was very good in the mirror match and against Shaddoll. The next real home for the card, however, would be Ritual Beasts, a deck known for time theft and elaborate combo trees that could get you near infinite card advantage from looping its resources turn after turn. The deck was a somewhat unexpected hit in the metagame because it didn't have a fantastic matchup against the likes of Burning Abyss or Klee per se, but more importantly than that, it had a great matchup against the best deck of the format, Nekroz. I also believe too many people had pulled full Ritual Beast cores, buying whole sets and boxes and maybe even cases of Secret Forces to try and actually pull a Nekroz core, and so they decided, well, I've got the whole deck anyways, may as well play it. But that's just my opinion. Ritual Beast was a solid deck in the national seasons of 2015, and the deck saw plenty of tops, including Irvin Tostado's build from YCS Columbus in 2015, showing a relatively standard build for its time. Since all the tamers in the deck were psychic, Emergency Teleport could get out any of them from the deck or even the hand to help with your combo, although this wasn't always ideal since each name in Ritual Beast can only be special summoned once per turn, so using Emergency Teleport would eat up that name for the turn, although it was still worth it to get the names into circulation. With the November 2015 ban list killing the meta and limiting Ulti Kanahak, however, for what I was assumed comedy more than anything else, Emergency Teleport once again fell out of relevance for a brief period. But E-Tele would finally find a deck to not just be Homan, but a true top-tier meta contender threat independently and on its own, not specifically just because of its matchups. Kozmo released in Clash of Rebellions with only 4 monsters and a field spell to its name, but even with only that, there was immediate potential. Michael State got a top 32 at YCS Dallas in 2015 with this list, playing Farm Girl to get damage in and then get out Forerunner as the deck's untargetable beater that would float on destruction. Early builds of the deck played Honest so as to help proc your Farm Girls, and plenty of hand traps to disrupt plays to make it easier to attack with Farm Girl, which was the best E-Tele target in the deck at the time. Kozmo would only go on to get even better with its next wave of support, and with Dimension of Chaos giving the deck Dark Destroyer, it went from solid to great. Not just topping YCS's, but instead winning them, like with Alejandro Suarez's first place list from YCS Sao Paulo. The deck was no longer in need of things like Honest to help get Farm Girl off, and Dark Destroyer was an untargetable 3000 attack beater that would float on destruction, which was very troublesome for any lower tier deck to deal with. As the meta grew, things like Monarchs would join the fray, and some builds of Monarch would play Emergency Teleport as well, able to summon a Super Quantum Blue layer as tribute fodder, and to search out Red layer, a card which could summon itself from hand if you controlled no monsters, and recover a copy of itself from the grave to hand on summon as well. It wasn't always the best or most popular build at the time, but it did see play regardless. It also sees play in some PK Fire builds, as a way to again summon out Blue layer in some builds and even just a Ghost Ogre in others, as all tools to make rank 3 plays. The moral of this story is, the top 3 decks of this format all had variants playing this one card, so it should not come as a surprise to anyone that it would eventually be hit. It inevitably went to 1 along with things like Dark Destroyer, and so it fell out of the metagame once again. The next time it would pop back up would be in World Chalice builds, since for whatever reason chosen by the World Chalice is a psychic type monster who is level 3. Why not? Its role here is to exactly summon out chosen from the deck to help extend plays when opened, but it's not exactly a consistent open, seeing as at this time Emergency Teleport was still limited. It wasn't the key to getting the deck going, but it did help pull off Link spam plays, and as one of the first Link decks with a coherent strategy, it did see some success at lower level events, namely regionals in early Link format. After this, Emergency Teleport is a sporadic pop-up in the meta, with its limited status preventing it from being a consistent tech in multiple decks, because there's just no strong Psychic decks introduced between 2016 and 2020, or at least that was deemed so by the community. That is until Virtual World hits the scene, a deck who likes to summon monsters with the levels of 3, 6, and 9. It's one designed to play E-Tele. It was able to get out any of your level 3 VWs for Xyz or Synchro plays, and even Emergency Teleport's banish at the end phase is arguably a non-issue, since VW banished plenty as part of its native plays, and even Nyan Nyan has an effect when it's banished, so it's not the end of the world if you can't do anything, although I can assure you, VW will be doing things. This was of course played to vomit out a copy or two of King of all Calamities and stun the opponent out of the game entirely. This deck fell out of contention when Konami got off their ass and banned the King, or VFD as you've probably known it, but at the same time Emergency Teleport was starting to come off the list. And just in time for the P.U.N.K engine. The P.U.N.K engine was one of a few released in 2022 that served as generic extenders to help build boards in the MUT format that was the mid-2022 with the likes of Adventure and Therian and all sorts of pile decks. Mishmashes of engines just to make strong, generic end boards using generic extra deck tools. This was important because P.U.N.K was a generic and splashable synchro engine full of psychic monsters, which meant once again, E-Tele was bringing out synchro plays, just as it had back in 2008. Daniel Hartman got first place with one such deck list, P.U.N.K Therian, seen here, using P.U.N.Ks to make some solid synchro bosses like Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss through the use of the chaotic ruler dragon dark synchro. He's banned now and I still don't know his name himself, as well as other plenty of generic Link tools. There were a plethora of other decks to play these sorts of engines, and as such, Emergency Teleport was once again becoming a popular tech. Which brings us to today as I make this video, which is not a format where it's seeing a ton of play due to the fact that Tier 0 decks are not playing the Psychic monsters, and therefore the Psychic monsters are not seeing play. Emergency Teleport is pretty much a timeless card. As I said, the free summon of a tuner from the hand, or especially the deck, causing trouble. Who could have seen this coming? Its applications are pretty damn wide, beyond just summoning a tuner. It's seen sporadic play in decks playing Psyframe Gamma as a hand trap, because it can summon Gamma from the deck to make extra copies of Gamma not dead on the draw, and summoning a Ghost Ogre from the deck has been a reliable play of my own, let alone of the meta, since for whatever reason Ghost Ogre can activate its effects from the field as well. And beyond that, it's access to every single level 3 or lower Psychic in the game that doesn't have a unique clause about summoning it, with no sort of once per turn or anything like that. So it's about as future-proofed as you can get in the more degenerate way, and not in the we put a once per turn on this because we have brain cells kind of way. It's a card that will always find a way to be relevant for some reason, especially with things like Ghost Ogre being a tuner on top of an on-field hand trap. And that's without mentioning archetypes that can truly abuse it. Shoutouts going to the likes of Farm Girl. I also gotta say, there is a part of me that really loves that this card can still be used to get out tuners. That's still one of the best plays it's doing. It is 2023 as I make this video, and it's being used for the exact same sorts of plays as it has been since 2008, just, you know, incorporating things like Xyz and Link summoning as well. I haven't even mentioned more niche decks that would play this card, such as Libromancer or any other Psychic engine deck, but there are plenty of ways to play this card and plenty of decks that will be very upset if it ever goes back to 1. Overall, Emergency Teleport is as close as a card can be to being a staple without really being a staple. It doesn't fit in every deck in the game, but when it can fit in a deck, it's almost always a 3 of. It's been as useful at setting up boards as it has been in OTKs for over a decade, and as long as there are even halfway decent Psychic monsters in this game, it's gonna show up in the meta from time to time. Summoning from the deck has been good enough to get cards like Tour Guide Limited, and E-Tele does it without even using your normal summon. So I'm sure we can expect it to be hit at some point in the future, and if history repeats itself, we'll continue to bounce up and down on the Forbidden and Limited list. But as I've said, as long as there's halfway decent Psychics to play, this card will be a good one. All it's gonna take is the right deck. And so that concludes our look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Single card history, Emergency Teleport. Stay tuned for our next video, and feel free to suggest some cards to review or what type of video you'd like to see. Don't forget to like, and as always, subscribe to YGO Strats. to impress your smoking Italian wife, and so you too can be a true duelist.